We did a thing called Financial Peace University here last year, and they accumulated the amount of debt acquired by those who are taking the course. And it was way above the national average. And a number of the people taking the course had zero debt. And so these statistics are real, very real. Folks, listen, our national debt is approaching $14 trillion. $14 trillion. Our national budget for 2010 is based on a deficit. That means we're not going to get income. This has to all be going out in loan. It's based on a deficit of $1.4 trillion deficit. Anticipated to be 1.6 next year. Let me break this down to you because I think you can understand it in this way. With that kind of a debt, the interest payment on this alone is $800 billion nationally, going out in interest. China and other places, just going out as interest. And if you read Barry Cameron's book, The ABCs of, when you see the word interest, you say, other people's money. It's just going out. We get nothing for it. $800 billion a year. Remember the feelings you had when you signed your first loan for your first house? Maybe bought your first car. And you're excited, but in the pit of your stomach. Nancy would tell you today, if I sign a note for something, we buy something or buy a house, I just get sick to my stomach. You get that feeling and you walk out of that going, what in the world have I just done? But after a little while, the feeling goes away with time. And you realize, everybody's got a mortgage and everybody's got car loan debt, credit cards. And you just kind of factor it out and say, it's just the way it is. So you get up the next morning and get in your car singing, I owe, so off to work I go. I owe. Like everybody else. Debt seems so subtle, so harmless, but it's not. I asked for a volunteer before we started service, and Brandon said he would volunteer. So Brandon, would you come up here for a minute? See, here's the problem with debt. Debt is a little bit like a ball and chain. And it's pretty bad. It's pretty nasty. And when you sign up for debt, give me your wrist there. When you sign up for debt, here's the problem. Comfortable? Yep. Okay. You're chained to it. It's there. Now, can you lift that up? Yeah, it's not too bad, is it? Yeah, it's not too bad. But this is just one. Imagine if the average American has greater than 4 credit cards. Now we're talking some encumbrance. And then you got student loans, and then you got house payment, and then you got car payment, maybe 1, maybe 2 if you're married. And then you got other revolving credit card things, and then you've got the obligation to all the electric company and the telephone company or cell phone company. And so before long, you find yourself handcuffed to multiple things. And whereas one is maybe not too bad, but you get a bunch of them in there, and it's going to slow you down. It's going to cause a problem. And the problem with it is wherever he goes, it's there. He can't go anywhere where it isn't attached to him. He goes to the bathroom. There it is. He gets in bed at night. He can forget all about it, but he rolls over. Oh, there it is again. Wakes him up. And he says, hey, yeah, I'll go with you. All of a sudden, oh, wait a minute. There's the debt. And it's a bondage that you're chained to. Thank you, Brandon. Go ahead and have a seat. That'll teach you to volunteer. In Proverbs chapter 6, verses 1 through 5, Solomon says this. Dear friend, if you've gone into hock with your neighbor, or what's the next word? Locked yourself into a deal with a stranger. If you've impulsively promised the shirt off your back and now find yourself shivering in the cold, friend, don't waste a minute. Get yourself out of that mess. You're in that man's clutches. Go put on a long face. Act desperate. Don't procrastinate. There is no time to lose. Run like a deer from the hunter. Fly like a bird from the trapper. Folks, listen, debt is not God's plan for our life. In any aspect of our life, debt has never been God's plan for our lives. When God was establishing his nation, the nation of Israel, when God was establishing his people, he gave some principles to them that I think are equally transferable to us in the new covenant. They're principles of the way to do business, to operate your lives, to handle ourselves. And this is what Moses recorded for God from the people. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 1 and 2, he says, if you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all of his commands that I give you today, the Lord God will set you high above all the nations of the earth. All these blessings will come upon you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. How many blessings? All these blessings. If you obey the Lord your God. And then he tells us those blessings. In verses 3 through 6, he says, you will be, what's the word? Blessed in your towns and in the country. You will be, what's the word? Blessed with many children and productive fields. In an agrarian society, productive field means you're going to have income. That's a good thing. He says, you will be, what's the word? Blessed with fertile herds and crops. You will be, what's the word? Blessed with baskets overflowing with fruit and with kneading bowls full of bread, which means you're going to have all the food, all the needs that you're going to have for your life and your family. And then he adds this. Read aloud with me, would you? Here we go, everybody. You will be blessed wherever you go, both in coming and in going. And there's more. In verse 12 and 13, he says, the Lord will send rain at the proper time. Now, in an agrarian society, rain is critical. But not just rain at the right time is critical. And he says he will send rain at the proper time from his rich treasury in heaven. Now look up here for a minute. How much does God have in his treasury in heaven? He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, the wealth in every mine, the psalmist says. He owns it all. It's all his. His treasury, you can't count. It's unfathomable. And he says he will pour out rain at the proper time out of the riches of his treasury in heaven. And he will do it to bless all the work you do. You will lend to many nations, but you will never need to borrow from them. You will listen to all these commands. If you listen to all these commands of the Lord your God and carefully obey them, the Lord will make you the head, not the tail. And you will always have the upper hand. Now let me ask you some questions. How many of you would like to have these kinds of blessings from the Lord? How many of you would? That's what I thought. Everybody, wow, yes, love to have that kind of blessing. How many of you would like to be a lender and not a borrower? That's what I thought. Everybody, yeah. How many of you would like to be the head and not the, what I'm talking about here? How many of you would like to have the upper hand in your business dealings, your financial management? Can you imagine what this would feel like? Can you imagine what it would feel like to be completely out of debt? No encumbrances at all. Not house, not car, nothing. Completely out of debt. Whew. Can you imagine what it would feel like to receive a paycheck that wasn't already obligated to bills and monthly payments? I'm not talking about livelihood. I'm just talking about no car payment, no house payment, no other bills outside. Can you imagine what it would feel like to be able to provide those little extra things to your family without the guilt of, if I buy this, I might have to pay for it for... Can you imagine what it would feel like to be able to give a tithe, 10% or more, to the church and to ministries without wondering which bill doesn't get paid if I give this? Can you imagine what it would be like to be part of a church that has zero debt? What we could do? So why can't we? Well, it's because of the bondage to debt. That's why it can't be done. That's why you don't have those feelings. It's like being handcuffed, isn't it, Brandon?